The fluorescent lights of the Denver VA Medical Center cast harsh shadows across the waiting room as Maya Rodriguez sat in the corner, her sleeves pulled down to her fingertips despite the suffocating heat. The plastic chair creaked under her weight as she shifted, trying to find a position that didn't make her shoulder throb with phantom pain. "Next!" called the receptionist, her voice cutting through the murmur of conversation. Maya watched as another veteran shuffled forward, his prosthetic leg catching the light. At least his sacrifice was visible, she thought bitterly. At least people could see what he'd given. "Hey, look at this one!" a voice sneered from across the room. "Playing dress-up as a soldier." Maya's jaw clenched. Three men in their 50s sat clustered together, their Vietnam-era ball caps askew, beer guts straining against faded military T-shirts. The one speaking, a heavy-set man with graying stubble, nudged his companion. "I'm telling you, Jerry, these millennials think they can just waltz into the military and collect disability checks. Look at her, probably never even left the States." "Probably got those scars from a kitchen accident," Jerry chuckled, his laugh wet and phlegmy. "Or maybe she's one of those cutters." You know how these young girls are. The third man, thin and wiry with nicotine-stained fingers, squinted at Maya. "My nephew did 3 tours in Afghanistan. Real tours. Not like these remfs sitting behind computers all day." Maya's hands trembled as she gripped the arms of her chair. The scars on her wrists burned as if they were fresh, each raised line a testament to battles these men couldn't imagine. She wanted to stand up, to show them the constellation of marks that decorated her arms like a road map of hell. But she'd learned to stay silent, to endure. "Rodriguez, Maya," the receptionist called. As Maya stood, her sleeve caught on the chair's arm, riding up just enough to reveal the bottom edge of her scars. The room fell silent for a moment, then erupted in whispers. "Jesus, look at those marks," the heavy-set man whispered, not bothering to lower his voice. "And I told you she was a cutter, probably trying to get a psych discharge." Maya's vision blurred with rage and humiliation. She yanked her sleeve down and hurried toward the reception desk, her combat boots echoing against the linoleum floor. "Dr. Patterson will see you now," the receptionist said, her voice kind but distant. "Room 237. The walk down the corridor felt like a death march. Maya could hear the men's laughter following her, their voices carrying through the thin walls. She'd survived firefights in Kandahar, IED explosions that had left her deaf for weeks, and the screams of her dying teammates. But somehow, the cruelty of these ignorant civilians cut deeper than any shrapnel. Dr. Patterson's office was a sanctuary of diplomas and soft lighting. The psychiatrist, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and silver hair, gestured for Maya to sit. "How are you feeling today, Maya?" "Like I want to disappear," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. Dr. Patterson leaned forward, her expression concerned. What happened? Maya told her about the waiting room, about the cruel assumptions and mocking laughter. As she spoke, she found herself rolling up her sleeves, exposing the intricate pattern of scars that covered her forearms. "They think I did this to myself," she said, her voice breaking. "They think I'm some attention-seeking kid who never saw combat." Dr. Patterson's eyes widened as she took in the scars. They weren't the chaotic slashes of self-harm. They were precise, deliberate marks arranged in careful rows. Some were thin and straight, others jagged and irregular. Each one told a story of survival, of enemies defeated, of missions completed. "Maya," Dr. Patterson said slowly, "these aren't self-inflicted wounds." "No," Maya confirmed, her voice growing stronger. "They're not. Each one represents a confirmed kill. It's an old tradition in my unit, special operations." We marked our victories, our survival, our service to our country. The weight of understanding settled between them. Maya had been part of an elite unit, one that didn't officially exist, one that carried out missions in places that would never appear on any map. The scars weren't symbols of weakness, they were badges of honor earned in the darkest corners of the world. "How many?" Dr. Patterson asked softly. Maya looked down at her arms, counting the familiar marks. 47 confirmed, she said. Each one a terrorist, a bomb maker, a threat to American lives eliminated. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of truth. Maya had spent 3 years in the shadows, fighting a war that most Americans would never know existed. She'd saved countless lives, prevented attacks, and sacrificed pieces of her soul in service to her country. "Those men in the waiting room, Doctor," Patterson said finally, "they have no idea what you've been through." "No," Maya agreed, rolling her sleeves back down, "and they never will." But as she left the office that day, Maya felt something shift inside her. The shame that had been her constant companion began to crack, revealing something harder underneath: pride. She'd earned every scar, every sleepless night, every moment of PTSD that brought her to this place. The waiting room was still full when she emerged, the same 3 men holding court in their corner. As she passed, she heard the heavy-set man whisper something about crazy bitches and fake soldiers. Maya stopped walking. Maya turned slowly, her combat boots squeaking against the polished floor. The 3 men looked up expectantly, smug grins spreading across their faces as if they'd been waiting for this moment. "Oh, you got something to say, sweetheart?" the heavy-set man asked, his voice dripping with condescension. "Or are you just gonna stand there looking tough?" The waiting room had gone quiet, other veterans and staff members sensing the tension. Maya could feel their eyes on her, some sympathetic, others curious, all waiting to see what would happen next. "Actually," Maya said, her voice steady despite the fire burning in her chest, "I do have something to say." She stepped closer, noting how the thin man's hand instinctively moved to his hip, old habits from Vietnam, looking for a weapon that wasn't there. The gesture almost made her smile, almost. "You think you know me," she continued, her voice carrying just enough to reach the back of the room. "Now you think because I'm young, because I'm a woman, because I don't look like your idea of a soldier, that I'm somehow less than you." "Lady, we've been around the block," Jerry wheezed, his chest rattling with each breath. "We know the difference between real warriors and wannabes." "Do you?" Maya asked, tilting her head. "Tell me, Jerry, that's your name, right? What did you do in Vietnam?" Jerry's chest puffed out with pride. "Logistics specialist, kept the supply lines moving. Without guys like me, the grunts wouldn't have had bullets to fight with." "Important work," Maya acknowledged, and she meant it. "And you?" She looked at the thin man. "Communications," he said defensively. "Kept the lines open between command and the field units." Maya nodded respectfully before turning to the heavy-set man. "And you?" "Motor pool," he said, his voice slightly less confident than before. "Kept the vehicles running." "All essential jobs," Maya said, her voice carrying no sarcasm. "The military machine depends on people like you. But tell me, how many of you actually pulled a trigger in combat?" The silence stretched uncomfortably. Maya had hit her mark. "Combat isn't just about pulling triggers," the heavy-set man said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You're right," Maya agreed. "Combat is about sacrifice. It's about giving everything you have for your country, for your brothers and sisters in arms. It's about making impossible choices in impossible situations." She began rolling up her sleeves, revealing the intricate pattern of scars that covered her forearms. The waiting room erupted in gasps and whispers. "You want to know what these are?" she asked, her voice carrying across the silent room. "Each one represents a confirmed kill." 47 confirmed eliminations of high-value targets, bomb makers, terrorist leaders, people who wanted to bring death to American soil. The three men stared in stunned silence. "I was part of a special operations unit that doesn't officially exist," Maya continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "We operated in places you can't find on any map, against enemies you've never heard of. We prevented attacks that would have killed thousands of Americans." She stepped closer to the heavy-set man, who had gone pale. "While you were sitting in your motor pool, changing oil and rotating tires, I was crawling through sewers in Kandahar, hunting down the bomb maker who'd killed 6 of my teammates. While you were complaining about the heat and the food, I was watching my best friend bleed out in my arms after she stepped on an IED meant for me." The room was dead silent now, every person hanging on her words. "These scars." Maya held up her arms, letting the light catch the raised tissue. "They're not from self-harm, they're not from kitchen accidents. They're from a tradition as old as warfare itself, marking your victories, honoring your fallen, remembering every life you've taken in service to your country." She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every veteran present. "Some of you fought in Vietnam, some in Iraq, some in Afghanistan. We all served. We all sacrificed. But don't you dare sit here and judge someone else's service based on how they look or how old they are." The heavy-set man tried to speak, but Maya cut him off. "I'm 26 years old. I've been fighting America's wars since I was 18. I've lost more friends than you've probably made in your entire lifetime. I've seen things that would break your mind, done things that haunt my dreams every single night." She pulled out her phone and showed them a photo. A group of women in full combat gear, faces painted with camouflage, weapons ready. "This is my unit. Delta Force, Task Force 373. We were the ones they called when the regular special forces couldn't handle the mission. We were the ones who went places too dangerous for men, who could blend in where male operators couldn't." She swiped to another photo, a memorial wall covered in names. "These are my sisters, killed in action while serving their country. While you were collecting your pension and complaining about millennials, they were dying for the freedom you take for granted." The thin man's hands were shaking now. We didn't know." "No," Maya said, her voice softening slightly. "You didn't know, but you assumed, you judged, you mocked, and that's the problem." She looked around the room one more time, taking in the faces of her fellow veterans, some ashamed, some proud, all finally understanding. Service isn't about age. It isn't about gender. It isn't about how you look or where you served. It's about what you're willing to sacrifice for something bigger than yourself. As she turned to leave, she heard a voice behind her. "Wait." The voice that had called out belonged to a tall man in his early 60s, dressed in civilian clothes, but carrying himself with unmistakable military bearing. His silver hair was cut in a precise fade, and his blue eyes held the sharp intelligence of someone accustomed to command. "Colonel James Morrison, retired," he said, extending his hand to Maya. "I was listening to your conversation, and I think we need to talk." Maya hesitated, then shook his hand. His grip was firm, respectful, the handshake of one warrior to another. "I don't know what you want from me, sir," Maya said carefully. "I've said my piece." "Actually," Colonel Morrison said, his voice carrying the authority of decades of command, "I think I know exactly who you are." He pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph. A group of soldiers in desert camouflage standing in front of a compound somewhere in Afghanistan. Maya's breath caught. She recognized the faces, the place, the mission. "Operation Shadow Strike," he said quietly. "March 15th, 2019, your unit eliminated a high-value target who'd been planning attacks on American soil for 2 years. Maya's eyes widened. "How do you—" "I was your commanding officer," Morrison said. "Not directly, but I ran the joint task force that coordinated with your unit. I signed off on every mission you went on." The waiting room had gone completely silent. Even the receptionist had stopped typing, listening intently to the conversation. "I remember the reports," Morrison continued, his voice carrying across the room. "Sergeant First Class Maya Rodriguez, call sign Ghost, expert marksman, demolition specialist fluent in Pashto and Arabic, 3 years of continuous deployment, 0 leave taken, 47 confirmed kills." He looked at the 3 men who had been mocking her, his expression cold with disgust. "Oh, did you want to know what this woman did for your country?" he asked them. "She spent 3 years of her life in hell so you could sleep safely in your beds. She watched her best friend die in her arms, then completed the mission anyway. She's killed more enemies of the United States than the 3 of you combined have ever even seen." The heavy-set man looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. "Sir," Maya said quietly, "you don't need to—" "Yes, I do." Morrison cut her off. "Because I've been watching what happens to soldiers like you when they come home. I've seen how the public treats our warriors when they don't fit the stereotype." He addressed the room now, his voice carrying the authority of command. "This woman is a decorated veteran of the global war on terror. She's been recommended for the Silver Star twice and the Bronze Star 4 times. The only reason she doesn't have a chest full of ribbons is because her unit's operations were classified." He walked over to the 3 men, his presence commanding their attention. "You," he said, pointing to the heavy-set man, "spent your military career changing oil and rotating tires. Honorable work, necessary work, but you never faced an enemy in combat. You never had to make life or death decisions under fire." The man's face had gone red with shame. "And you," he turned to Jerry, "ran communications from a secure bunker. Again, important work, but you never had to crawl through enemy territory with a 40-pound pack, never had to watch your teammates die." Jerry's breathing had become labored, his face pale. "This woman," Morrison continued, his voice rising, "has done more for your freedom in her 8 years of service than most people do in a lifetime. She's eliminated threats you'll never know existed, prevented attacks that would have killed thousands of Americans." He walked back to Maya, his expression softening. "I've read your file, Rodriguez. I know what you've been through. I know about the nightmares, the survivor's guilt, the way the memories eat at you, but I also know what you accomplished." Maya felt tears threatening, but she held them back. She'd cried enough. "And the bombing in Times Square that was prevented in 2018, Morrison said to the room. "She stopped that. The chemical weapons plot in Chicago, she and her team eliminated the cell responsible. The attacks on military families in San Diego, she put an end to that threat." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. 47 confirmed kills, he repeated, each one a terrorist, a bomb maker, a threat to American lives. Each one eliminated with surgical precision by a warrior who sacrificed everything for her country. The thin man finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. We're sorry. We didn't know." "No," Morrison said firmly. You didn't know because you didn't want to know. You saw a young woman with scars and made assumptions. You let your prejudices override your respect for the uniform." He looked around the room at the other veterans, many of whom were nodding in agreement. "This is what our warriors look like now," he said. "They're young, they're diverse, they're tougher than any generation that came before them, and they deserve our respect, not our judgment." Maya felt something breaking inside her, not breaking apart, but breaking open. The shame she'd carried for so long was cracking, revealing something she'd forgotten she possessed: pride. "Thank you, sir," she said quietly. "Don't thank me yet," Morrison replied with a slight smile. "Good, I'm not done." He pulled out his phone again and made a call. "General Martinez? It's Jim Morrison. I need you to make some calls. We have a situation at the Denver VA that needs immediate attention." Within 20 minutes, the Denver VA Medical Center's waiting room had transformed into something resembling a military command center. 3 staff cars were parked outside, their official plates gleaming in the afternoon sun. The buzz of activity was palpable as personnel moved with purpose through the corridors. Maya watched in amazement as a woman in her 50s, wearing the dress blue uniform of a brigadier general, strode into the waiting room. Behind her came a parade of military personnel, a Navy captain, 2 Marine colonels, and several senior NCOs, all in dress uniforms despite the casual nature of the visit. "And General Martinez," Colonel Morrison said, standing at attention despite being in civilian clothes. "Jim," the general replied, then turned to Maya. "Sergeant Rodriguez, I presume?" Maya snapped to attention instinctively. "Yes, ma'am." "At ease, soldier." General Martinez's voice carried the authority of command, but also warmth. "I understand we have a situation here." She looked around the waiting room, taking in the faces of the veterans present. The 3 men who had mocked Maya were trying to make themselves invisible in their corner, but her gaze found them anyway. "I'm Brigadier General Carmen Martinez, commander of the Special Operations Support Activity," she announced to the room. "I've come here today because one of my soldiers was disrespected, and that's something I take very personally." She walked over to Maya, her expression softening. "Rodriguez, I've been following your recovery. I know the transition has been difficult." "Yes, ma'am," Maya replied, her voice steady despite the emotions churning inside her. "I also know," General Martinez continued, raising her voice so the entire room could hear, "that you've been dealing with ignorance and prejudice from people who should know better." She turned to address the room. "Sergeant First Class Maya Rodriguez is one of the finest soldiers I've ever had the privilege to command. Her unit, Task Force 373, was responsible for eliminating some of the most dangerous terrorists in the world. They operated in complete secrecy, with no recognition, no medals, no parades." The general walked over to the 3 men who had been mocking Maya. "You gentlemen are veterans, I'm told. Vietnam era. You served your country, and for that you have my respect. But respect is a 2-way street." The heavy-set man looked up nervously. "General, we didn't mean—" "You didn't mean what?" She cut him off. "You didn't mean to mock a decorated war hero? You didn't mean to belittle someone who sacrificed more for this country than most people ever will?" The silence in the room was deafening. "Let me tell you about Sergeant Rodriguez," the general continued. "In 2018, she single-handedly eliminated a terrorist cell that was planning to bomb a children's hospital in Phoenix. She spent 6 months undercover, living in squalor, risking her life every day to prevent the deaths of innocent Americans." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "In 2019, she and her team prevented a chemical weapons attack on a military base in Germany. 47 of our soldiers, children, attend school on that base. Without her actions, those children would be dead. Maya felt tears threatening again, but this time they weren't tears of shame. They were tears of pride, of recognition, long overdue. "These scars you've been mocking," General Martinez said, gesturing to Maya's arms. "They represent a tradition that goes back thousands of years. Warriors marking their victories, honoring their fallen, remembering every life they've taken in service to their people." She looked directly at the three men. "Each one of those marks represents a terrorist who will never again threaten American lives. Each one represents a bomb that will never explode, an attack that will never happen, families that will never grieve." The Marine colonel stepped forward. "General, if I may." "Of course, Colonel Thompson. I knew Rodriguez's team leader, Captain Sarah Williams. She was killed in action in 2019, along with 3 other members of the unit. The only reason Rodriguez survived was because she was providing overwatch from a rooftop 2 blocks away." Maya's breath caught. She remembered that night, the explosion, the screams, the way the world had gone silent, except for the ringing in her ears. "Rodriguez held that position for 6 hours, Colonel Thompson continued, calling in airstrikes and directing rescue operations while under heavy fire. She saved 12 wounded soldiers that night, including 3 from her own unit." He looked at Maya with obvious respect. "She was recommended for the Medal of Honor. The only reason she didn't receive it was because the mission was classified." The room erupted in murmurs of amazement and respect. Maya felt the weight of years of shame and silence lifting from her shoulders. "So when you see this young woman," General Martinez said, addressing not just the 3 men, but the entire room, "you're not seeing a damaged kid with scars. You're seeing a warrior. You're seeing someone who's given everything for her country and asked for nothing in return." She walked back to Maya. "Rodriguez, I have something for you." She nodded to one of the NCOs, who stepped forward with a presentation case. "This is long overdue," the general said, opening the case to reveal a Silver Star medal. "By order of the Secretary of Defense for gallantry in action against an enemy of the United States." The room erupted in applause as Maya stared at the medal in shock. "General, I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Martinez replied. "And you've already said it all with your service." As the general pinned the medal to Maya's shirt, the heavy-set man who had been mocking her stood up. "Sergeant Rodriguez," he said, his voice shaking, I owe you an apology. We all do." Maya looked at him, then at his companions, seeing not enemies but fellow veterans who had simply forgotten what service really meant. "Apology accepted," she said simply. But General Martinez wasn't finished. Actually," she said, "I have one more thing." General Martinez gestured to the Navy captain, who stepped forward with another presentation case, this one larger and more ornate. "Sergeant Rodriguez," the general said, her voice carrying the weight of ceremony, "what I'm about to tell you has been classified for 5 years. But as of this morning, the Secretary of Defense has declassified certain aspects of your service record." Maya's heart pounded as she watched the captain open the case, revealing not just another medal, but a complete display of ribbons, citations, and commendations. The Bronze Star with V device for valor in combat, General Martinez began, reading from an official document. The Purple Heart for wounds received in action, the Combat Action Badge, the Special Forces tab, the Ranger tab. With each announcement, the room grew quieter, the weight of Maya's service becoming clear to everyone present. the Joint Service Commendation Medal with V device, the Army Commendation Medal with V device, the Joint Service Achievement Medal. The general paused, looking directly at the three men who had mocked Maya. The Presidential Unit Citation, the Joint Meritorious Unit Award. She closed the document and looked around the room. In total, Sergeant Rodriguez has earned 17 individual awards for valor and meritorious service. She's been wounded in action 4 times and has never taken a day of leave during her entire deployment cycle. The heavy-set man who had started this confrontation was now openly weeping. "Jesus Christ," he whispered, "what have we done?" "You've learned," Colonel Morrison said firmly. "That's what matters now." General Martinez turned back to Maya. "There's something else. The President has signed an executive order creating a new program for veterans like you, warriors whose service has been hidden in the shadows for too long. You're going to be the first recipient of the Shadow Warrior Recognition Program." She handed Maya an official-looking document. "This guarantees you full disability benefits, priority medical care, and most importantly, official recognition of your service. No more hiding, no more shame. No more silence." Maya's hands shook as she read the document. After years of carrying her burdens alone, of being unable to talk about her service, of feeling like her sacrifices meant nothing, she was finally being recognized. "But that's not all," the general continued with a slight smile. "I have an offer for you." She gestured to the Marine colonel. "Colonel Thompson runs our new Warrior Transition Program. We're looking for someone to help other Special Operations veterans make the transition to civilian life, someone who understands what they've been through." "You want me to help other veterans?" Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not just help them," Colonel Thompson said. "Lead them, train them. Show them that their service matters, that their sacrifices have meaning, that they're not alone." Maya looked around the room at the faces watching her. Veterans from different eras, different conflicts, but all united by their service. She saw understanding now, where there had been judgment, respect, where there had been mockery. "I don't know if I'm ready," she said honestly. "None of us were ready for what we faced in combat," General Martinez replied. "But we did our duty anyway. This is just another mission, Rodriguez, a mission to help your brothers and sisters in arms." Maya thought about Captain Williams, about the teammates she'd lost, about the nights she'd spent wondering if their deaths had meant anything. Here was a chance to give meaning to their sacrifice, to ensure that other veterans didn't face the same isolation and misunderstanding she had endured. "Yes, ma'am," she said firmly. "I accept." The room erupted in applause again, but this time it was different. This time it was the sound of recognition, of respect, of a warrior finally coming home. The heavy-set man approached her, his face red with shame and tears. "Sergeant Rodriguez, I don't know how to make this right." Maya looked at him for a long moment, then at his companions. "You want to make it right?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. Anything." "Then do better," she said simply. "When you see another veteran, don't assume, don't judge, don't mock. Ask questions, listen, learn. Remember that service comes in many forms, and heroism doesn't always look like what you expect." She extended her hand to him. "We're brothers in arms, whether we like it or not. Let's act like it." The man took her hand, his grip firm but reverent. "Yes, ma'am." "I promise." As the ceremony concluded and the military personnel prepared to leave, Maya found herself surrounded by the other veterans in the waiting room. Some wanted to shake her hand, others to share their own stories, all of them seeing her now for who she truly was, not a damaged young woman with scars, but a warrior who had earned her place among them. Dr. Patterson appeared at her side, smiling through tears. "How do you feel now, Maya?" Maya looked down at her arms, at the scars that had been a source of shame for so long. Now they told a different story, not of damage, but of triumph, not of weakness, but of strength, not of a broken soldier, but of a warrior who had done her duty and survived to tell the tale. "I feel proud," she said, her voice strong and clear. "Yes, for the first time in years, I feel proud." As she left the VA medical center that day, Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Colonel Thompson. "Your first class starts Monday. 15 special operations veterans, all struggling with the transition. Show them what you showed us today." Maya smiled, rolling up her sleeves in the afternoon sun. Her scars caught the light, each one a reminder of battles fought and won, of enemies defeated, of lives saved. They were no longer marks of shame, but badges of honor, proof that she had served her country with distinction and survived to continue serving in a new way. The mockery was over. The silence was broken. The shadow warrior had finally stepped into the light.